just, something passed. But really, thank you so much. What an enlightening discussion and panel and we had. So Jonette and Rachel and Chu and Wakungs, really, that's so gracious and kind of you to share your time, listen in, and also for your colleagues and to everybody out there listening. Where so much is happening there, so it really means a lot to have our listeners following it. And we move over now, and again, we come to different parts of the world. We will hear from Malaysia and from Lebanon, and also Tom from the Living Theater will be with us and listening in. And and we have Nisha and Diya from India, from the Karnataka region. So it is quite a selection. And again, Tanvi, thank you so much, for putting together this group of artists that gives us a little idea of the vastness of that country, the richness of its people, and how sad it is, that things seem to be so complex. So maybe we do a little round around first. So we have also Shakir with us here, who is sharing his time with Sahar. He's a colleague, an Indian colleague. So it's quite a big and beautiful panel. So maybe we just go around fast and say where we are and what time it is. Tom joined us earlier. So Tom is part of the Living Theater, of a legendary group, but he's in New York. Govin, where are you now? And what time is it?
Hi everybody. I am calling in from Melbourne, Australia, and it is 2 p.m. in the afternoon.
Yeah, Terence, are you also with him? Are you in Melbourne?
Unfortunately, I'm still in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. It's 12 p.m. here. It's noontime.
It's noontime already.
Yes,
incredible. Sahar, where are you?
Right now I'm in Seattle, actually, and it's 9 p.m.
So that's a good time for you still. Well, we try to time it. Shakir, where are you, Shakir?
I'm in Jharkhand, Ranchi, India, and it's 9:45 in the morning.
So let's say that 12 hours separate you. And Nisha and Diya, where are both of you? Maybe Nisha first.
Bangalore, and we're 10 minutes behind Shakir at 9:32.
Incredible. Diya?
Hi, I'm also in Bangalore, same time as Nisha, 9:32.
So maybe we'll start off with both of you right away, and tell us about your work, who you are, and what you are doing. Diya, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me. I am a contemporary dancer and a choreographer, performance maker, and I'm an independent artist, essentially working with a collective of artists and collaborating with different artists. And yeah, so this is what I do professionally, and wearing many other hats depending on what need arises.
What are the other hats?
So definitely facilitator. This year has primarily been more like a teacher, because so much of teaching on Zoom, all the gigs of course get cancelled, and so it's more about teaching at the moment. I also end up curating and sort of arts managing in whatever capacity I can, because I mean, one is filling in a gap in an ecology, essentially fundraising and all of that in my artistic capacity. And specifically to the pandemic this year, I think I've been doing what I can to look at the mental health aspect of the community around me, and artists who are sort of not just for economical but many other reasons, feeling lost or losing themselves in some ways.
Nisha, do you both collaborate? Tell us about your work.
I'm a playwright and a director. I write and direct for stage. I also do dramaturgy. I also use a lot of storytelling and theater in my community work. So my theater tends to be in the intersections of community, social justice, and teaching. So Diya and I are very familiar with each other's work. We've in fact constantly checked in with each other through the pandemic as well. We've raised funds together, and we have a large group of artists who we each know and have tried to support each other as well. It's quite a close community in Bangalore, and there's constant collaborations between theatre artists and movers. Yeah.
Amazing. So how is the situation? How are you experiencing? We had other artists from Bangalore. So some say, we cannot do anything. It is devastating. How are you experiencing the moment personally in this political sense? What we talk about?
Well, in fact, Diya and I were catching up yesterday about this conversation that we're going to be having with you, Frank, and we were talking about how there's been such a complete breakdown of the social contract, really, and so many of us are having to show up in ways that, and at a scale at which we probably didn't think we would have to, and over such a long period of time. This showing up for each other as artists, showing up for just civil society and citizens trying to fix things that really is the government's role, started last year with the first wave. And it's been fairly relentless since then. There have been dips, of course, but it's fairly continued throughout. And with the second wave, almost eerily, at the same time, we had to deal with fairly apocalyptic scenes. So personally, there's been a lot of showing up in different ways. And I'm always thinking about how, it's about bearing witness personally to what has been happening. So there's been a lot of fundraising for food relief. There's been literally like patrolling the highways last year to help migrants make their way through, from the south of the city to the north. Of course, about the migrant crisis. I was listening when you were talking to Anurupa. So similar to what Anurupa experienced there, we had an entire group of millions of workers making their way from the south to the north. And at one point last summer, some of us, me included, were in my car patrolling the highways, watching out for these groups of people, many of them women, children, some of them pregnant even, and we had food and water, medicines in the car, and we're trying to get this to them, trying to tell them about the train services, which were sporadic, but they were present. So it's been really odd looking back at the 1 year as well, because there has been so many intense moments of coming together, so many various groups of people. With this second wave, of course, there was a lot of the medical relief that was going on. So in the daytime, I'd be involved in food relief, fundraising, working with volunteers to pack and deliver. And then in the second half of the day, there'd be a lot of hunting for oxygen, hunting for beds, also providing, some basic holding of space for people who were struggling through the COVID crisis, people who were trying to give care to their family, people who we had no idea who they were strangers. And often we would find ourselves in situations where we'd have to provide some comfort, for people whose loved ones were in hospital or at home. So when Diya says multiple hats, it's really been many hats that I didn't think I'd be wearing for so long a time. Yeah.
Yeah, that is quite stunning. How was it for you, Diya? How did you experience? Did you both see the burning of the bodies and all of that?
I mean, for me, I actually got COVID really early in the pandemic. I was returning from a project in Switzerland, and I think I was patient number 23 or something, which a lot of my collaborators and friends kind of tease me about. And so I was immediately whisked off to hospital and sort of locked in for 3 weeks at a time when nobody knew what was happening. So it was a very strange and frightening time.
Mm-hmm.
I was also made to leave my house because the landlord was really paranoid about COVID once I returned. And all of that. So that was how it began for me. And we were talking about yesterday as well, Nisha and I, and we were noticing how 2020 was, in India, we have this word jugaad. And jugaad essentially means sort of like resourcefulness, like this ability to like hustle like crazy. So as independent artists in a fairly unorganized system, we've been hustling forever. If you have to make work, you have to hustle. If you have to practice, you have to hustle for the studio or the space and etc. So we were like, all right, this basically means a deeper degree of hustling and we're going to be okay. And it was around this time that I started to notice that there were some artists in our immediate circles who were responding quite awkwardly, not talking about what's going on, shutting themselves in. And in a bid to kind of actually seduce them out of that, I started something called Circles of Resilience. And like Nisha referred to, and in many of the talks, we've talked about how really civilians and citizens were looking after citizens. So in this case, it was the mental health community of Bangalore and a few other cities of India that really stood up for the artists, and for pro bono would facilitate. There would be one therapist or mental health practitioner in a circle of 10 artists, art humans from all over, and they would hold space and allow sharing of course, the challenges, the grief, the loss, but also then sort of lead towards a resilience building. And one of the things I noticed, for example, of course, obviously, was that in 2020, these circles that we held were full of artists from all over the world, different walks of life, poets, dancers, writers, directors, sculptors, photographers, all kinds of artists, art students who had been stalled in the middle of their course, were stuck in another country, very established artists, and it didn't matter at that time. By the time we got to 2021, the circles were predominantly Indian artists or artists of Indian origin abroad, because other countries had moved on in certain ways, at least at that time. Mm-hmm. I know it's going to go up and down. And that was like a big, sort of reality check to be then in a circle of only Indian faces on screen, because you're like, okay, this has happened again. And if I may, one of the things last year that we observed among all the grief and all of the insecurity, anxiety, was that if at all there is a poetry to the coronavirus, in a way, it is to really shun separation. It is to kind of circle and say that we are so connected that somebody sort of takes a breath in China at the wrong time, the wrong place, and the entire world comes to a standstill. And as humans, we could really feel that everybody at some level going through the same things. You're talking to collaborators in Australia or Switzerland or wherever, and everyone's talking about masks, pandemic, vaccine, the same kind of concerns, loss. And suddenly come back to 2021 and we're back to our habit of separation. We are back to first world versus global south. We are back to rich versus poor, high risers versus slum dwellers. And how quickly we fall back into that. So for me, this has really been a study of those wounds in the spaces between us, the things that separate us, and how quickly we go back into that, and a practice in as many ways as one can of non-separation, and as the artist of learning to listen to what is needed, because I don't think we know yet. I think we'd be very presumptuous to say, oh, we figured this out.
Yeah,
so,
it is stunning to hear all the stories, how the Indian art community have come out, how especially even in the arts communities, theater people were the ones to organize, to show compassion, stay up night after night after night, like Abhishek and his team and so many others. And what you guys did, was Nisha did, driving the highways to help the migrant workers. And you, Diya, it's stunning, this catastrophic failure of government, and that it was put on your shoulders. And it's good. If you have a reading, maybe it's a time to do it now. We can also talk, but maybe you prepared something, and we would love to hear that.
Nisha, would you like to read? You and I could go after you.
Sure. I just wanted to sort of say something about the information black hole also that we kind of operate out of before I share the reading. There's been so much of trying to figure our way around the pandemic because of the lack of information that comes to us. So not only are we dealing with, food crisis and oxygen crisis and things like that, we're also dealing with just battling, just figuring out what is real and what is not.
Yeah.
And that has often made the difference between, being able to function with anxiety versus without anxiety. The onus has been on the people, has been on the citizens to figure out how to navigate this. Bogus medical responses to corona are validated by the National Health Minister and things like that, and nobody really knows how to navigate the vaccine crisis. So I'm hoping that there's still time to, for the government to get its act together for the wave
really
that's
about
inevitably
time.
coming. Yeah. There's
So
something
we
I
have
wrote-
we have about 2 minutes for each, or 2.5 minutes, so just so you know.
Something I wrote a couple of months ago, and I thought I'd read that. It came from just, having our backs against the wall. How do we learn to trust each other again? For the first time in our collective human history, too many of us have our backs to the wall. And so it seems like a small miracle just to form this question. To ask it out loud seems downright audacious, perhaps just too much of a task. Perhaps before anything else, we need to be able to see ourselves for who we are. The ugliness, the toxic mess, the envy, the pride, the sins of the fathers visited upon the sons for generations. When we truly see the cruelty and the ugliness within us without looking away, perhaps from such a moment of complete surrender, we can begin to function as humans once again. I want to believe that as writers and poets and teachers and movers and theater makers, we have the stories, the songs, the words, the voices, the bodies that can show the world how to feel human again, how to touch each other once again. And I need to believe this. When my heart takes to anger, I need to soothe it with action. I write of our unapologetic lives. I create worlds on stage that imagine a different, more radical equality for us all. I work and play with young minds, teaching them to revel in the questioning and the searching, holding them as they stomp down on burdens, celebrating as they expand their hearts to include those who are not the same as us. I stand beside those whose fights are similar to ours. Together, we remind ourselves that our collective future lies in the small acts that add up. We hold hands and raise our fists, trusting each other to never give in to the cynicism. Together, we resist the brutalization of our own hearts. And I want to sort of offer that as an invitation to people who are listening to step into this, to this crisis and.
Like you guys did. I'm so impressed what you did. I can only imagine. It's so easy to say, it's so easy for me to sit here, say yes, but to really do it, and then also day after day, it's stunning. Diya, what do you have for us?
Okay, I'm going to keep my eye on the time, Frank. So this is an article I wrote for the Impulse Theatre book that they published called Circles of Resilience. And it was really drawing from a lot of things that were happening in these circles. So I'll just tell you a few it becomes like a study of the wave of the way losses were being experienced. Names and countries of people are changed to protect their identity. Dora the dancer is a girl with half my heart in Bangladesh and half my heart in France. Yamini, the poet and traveler, is stuck in Germany and therefore lost, seeking tools and clarity, envious of the plants that always seem to know which way the light is. In therapy circles, the wound is where the light comes in. When witnessed with courage, grace, and compassion, it presents an opportunity for transformation. As a movement artist, my body is my diagnostic tool. As a human, it is my map and locates me in the present. Actor Anil and choreographer Danny both hold anger and guilt to the dichotomy of allowing these emotions to travel through their bodies like daily visitors, questioning everything. Where is our relevance? Are we doing enough? Was it always like this? Dance student Kriti is without words and cannot name her experience. Ananya, the filmmaker, feels absurd and ashamed, but accepting and experimental too. John, the performance maker, is terribly calm. This scares him. He jokes a lot. It is what it is. It is his title for this chapter of human history. Aisha, studying performing arts in Vienna, says that like her anger does not leave the room. Sense making has not happened yet. A filmmaker in Bombay talks about how she can hear the announcements from the bus stop to the daily wage laborers. The bus is full. Please wait for the next one. And then, this is for your own good. It devastates her. She breaks Many of us cry. Our therapist asks, are you willing to feel the pain?
Yeah, yes, that is amazing. Because the question is between, are we doing enough? You know, is it good? Are you willing to feel the pain? And yeah, the people who are on the buses, you know, it reminds me of that Toni Morrison, the great writer, of the comment she made. She said, you know, the people who died in the World Trade Center attack were the people who had to take the early buses, you know, the people who cleaned the places, you know, had to be there early for the restaurants, for the cafes. People, the other came later, but it hit the ones. And this is again, the people who are taking the bus. So really, really thank you both. And we should spend so much more time with you. But I think we agreed on the format. So we now have to slowly go over. And we have Sahar with us and Shakir. And so tell us a little bit, Sahar, what's going on? You left Beirut. Sahar was in Beirut when this big explosion happened, next to all the catastrophic things the country has gone through anyway. I do remember when, you know, you were still trembling and the glass splinters, you know, were on the floor basically. And now you moved to San Francisco. You is with Golden Thread Production. And so what's happening in the world? How do you feel? How do you put this all together?
Thank you so much, Frank. I honestly don't know how I feel. I know, like, physically I'm okay, I'm well. I left Beirut like 3 months ago. A big part of my soul and heart is still there, obviously. So you know, it's not a simple act to just like uproot yourself and life and just go on. So I'm here now. I'm extremely grateful to be with Golden Thread Productions. I am serving as the executive artistic director of the company, which is dedicated to theater from and about the Middle East.
Tell us a little bit what you did in Beirut. What are you doing in theater?
Yeah, I'm a theater maker. I'm mainly a director, an actor. I sometimes produce and also translate theater. I'm mainly interested in documentary theater. So, you know, some of the work that I've done recently is documentary theater, you know, about certain social issues that spoke to me, or political crises or social crises that spoke to me. The most recent has been a documentary play about sex trafficking in Lebanon. I did another documentary play about sexual assault and rape as part of a national campaign against the social illnesses. I did work about the Lebanese civil war. I'm interested in theater that breaks conventions, theater that breaks even the architecture of the proscenium. I've done Garcia Lorca, Blood Wedding in a site-specific promenade performance. I've done Shakespeare in spoken Lebanese. You know, I'm interested in stories, mainly in stories that speak to me, to my heart, but also, you know, stories that, as a theater maker, allow me to reflect on what's going on. Like when I did the project on sex trafficking, I did it mainly for me because it was when the story came out, I couldn't really grasp what I couldn't perceive it. I couldn't understand how such an atrocity could occur in our day.
Refugee women who were forced into prostitution in the front of the eyes of everybody, thousands of them.
It was horrible. And it was the biggest sex trafficking ring in Lebanon, and it was protected by Social Security for a long time. So when that happened, I wanted to understand. So and the way I understand is through theater. I think theater offers us a safe place to explore and you know, go deep into our humanity and
Could you do that going in the time now and before you left? What happened in Beirut? Can you go deep? Can you explore things in the time of Corona? And
it was, so just to give maybe a little bit of a context of what was going on. So the country was witnessing the first of its kind protest that we called revolution, because it really felt like a revolution, and we call it October 17 revolution. So protests erupted overnight in every single major city in the country. So it was really decentralized. Usually protests were happening in Beirut, but that night the government imposed an extra tax, and it was funny because it was a tax on WhatsApp. which was free for the people because cell phones are really expensive in Lebanon. So everyone went into the streets, and some of us were like, doubtful. We didn't really think this is going to last or this is going to really go someplace. But eventually, it was a wide, it was expanded over the country. It was so refreshing and inspiring. People of all backgrounds were on the streets protesting peacefully with unified demand for decent basic services and basic rights. And if the revolution was growing and growing, it encompassed many avenues for various groups to voice out their demands. So women groups were, for instance, called for equality, bringing attention to gender-based violence. Families of the disappeared of the Lebanese civil war were on the streets demanding implementation of laws that would help them uncover, the fate of the missing, the missing beloved ones. Domestic workers were on the street calling for obliteration of the kafala system. Everyone were on the streets. So when COVID hit, it was really hell, and it brought pain to all of us in the world, but to the Lebanese political regime, it was a gift sent by God, because it really gave them an excuse to pull people off the streets of the country. So when they imposed the curfew, that definitely put a halt to the protests that were happening. And then the economic situation started deteriorating really fast. So the country now is in a deep economic depression, especially after the explosion that hit Lebanon on August 4. So it has been referred by experts as the third non-nuclear explosion in the history of mankind. In a matter of seconds, half of the city was completely destroyed. Completely. It was like really a scene out of a war movie. Over 200 people were killed, more than 6,000 injured, 300,000 went without a roof overnight. And, almost a year today after the explosion, and we still didn't hear one official statement by the authorities in Lebanon explaining what happened. The president came on TV days later saying that in 5 days we're going to have the report, and started referring to the explosion as an accident and speaking in terms of this is an opportunity to kind of bring in, borrow more money to Lebanon. It was horrendous, at all levels.
Incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So now you go to San Francisco. So what are you going to do? Did you wanted to get out, or did they discover you? And what are your plans?
The first thing I'm doing in my new position is actually a reading based on testimonies of survivors of the explosion that's going to happen on August 3rd this year, which will mark the 1 year, memory of the explosion. And it's basically, we're going to be reading testimonies in English and Arabic, and I'm obviously dedicating this event to Beirut. And it's really for me because I couldn't disconnect. The explosion was very traumatic to all of us, although I'm one of the lucky, ones who didn't lose a loved one, didn't lose a home, but I was traumatized by the fact that it happened. So I'm doing this reading here with actors in San Francisco and also actors in Beirut. So it's going to be an international event, and I'm bringing in a panel of legal, experts, also, trauma psychologists, performing artists, to talk about how to deal with the aftermath of this, and also to support the families of survivors who are now collecting themselves in some sort of a lobby calling for justice. This is simply what they want. They want, the people who to be accountable, the people in charge. They wanted at least one arrest, which never happened, not one resignation happened after such a catastrophic event. So this is the first thing I'm doing. And I think, that I'm hoping this event and other things I will do in that regard will help me heal and be able to bring back the voice of the artist in me. I know there are so many stories I want to tell, but this is something that's still hurting so bad. So I couldn't just move back and come here and completely, forget about it, because it's there. It's in, I hear a sound and I think of it. I look at my child, and every time I'm grateful he's still here, because I could have been
You were with your father, right, up there in the mountains at the time, or?
I was actually in my home close to Beirut, which, well, not close, 20 minutes by car. but it felt like the explosion happened in our apartment. So I remember there were 30 seconds between my study room and to get into my toddler's bedroom. And the 30 seconds, all I remember is my screams, because I didn't know if I'm going to find him there, because I felt like the explosion happened in our building. And my husband and I, first reaction was like, this is an earthquake. But then when we heard the sound, we thought Israel is bombing, because this is in Lebanon. This is what we're used to, you know, like 2006, when Israel was bombing Lebanon, we still remember that. So that was the first reaction. And then we turn on the news, and then, you know, the city is destroyed.
Yeah, and it's biblical, as you said, in a way, that next to Corona and the plague, you know, that you have the bombing. It's just, it is just unbelievable. And and I think it was Einstein who said, you know, people who create the problem are not able to solve it, because if they could solve it, it wouldn't be a problem. And so the people who created this disaster that this for years, you know, was stored as, they will not be able to do, and they have, as you said, no interest. When we talked, Sahar, you said, I want Shakir with me. I said, well, we have a full panel. You said, I don't care. That is important to me. So tell me a little bit, and maybe Shakir, you introduce yourself, or you introduce him, whatever you feel.
I mean, Shakir and I met at Odin in 2018, Shakir, I think. We met at Odin, at Eugenio Barba Odin Teatret in Holstebro, Denmark. We were both attending the 10-day Odin Theatre Festival, where they introduced you to their technique and repertoire. And when you, obviously, like Marathon for India, I was like, Shakir is my Indian friend, and my, you know, my theater friend, because the theater world, as we know, is quite a small world, you know. So I immediately contacted him. I was like, you have to speak, you have to be there, you have to tell us what's happening. It's an opportunity. And thank you, Frank, so much for your generosity and for creating this space to all of us. So Shakir, you should tell us, I mean,
Thank you, all of you, and especially Frank and Sahar. I teach theater at Central University of Jharkhand. Jharkhand is the eastern state of India. And I used to deal with the students of masters in theater arts. And the situation for the last 1.5 years is quite pathetic, because no physical classes is going on. And we are cut off from our students. We are teaching in online mode. And we are just completing our syllabus, but not very much satisfied with the things which is happening. But we have been forced to indoors. That's the thing. And as a professionally, I'm speaking. But when in terms of the artistic problem, and especially I'm talking about the Jharkhand state. Because you people are talking about all over the India. So Jharkhand is suffering the same situation I think the rest of the world are facing. But somehow the government has launched a scheme for the old age group who is having more than 60 years. They are giving some money, financial support to them, but still it's not enough for them. And the people to whom I know, my lot of friends, my colleagues, and the group members who are working in independent group, as I'm working in a university and I'm not financially, I'm not having any problem with the finance, but rest of the people are they are in that situation. They are living the spaces of city, and they are migrated towards the rural areas, where they are going, and they are working in the fields. They are working as a farmers. They are working as a daily laborers. And many friends of mine is working like serving in Zomato, and they are driving. They have learned to drive, and they're working as a driver. So this is the situation of an artist. So and government is
it's quite a tough situation that you know could not rely on anything. I think theater artists in New York also need to have a second job. It's impossible to really survive if you're not in the commercial theater. Traditionally were restaurants, but all the restaurants are closed. and no musicians could play even in the bars, and great world-class musicians. And so it's devastating, you know, throughout the world. I don't know, Sahar and Shakir, did you prepare a reading? If so, we'll do it now. If not, we can of course continue, because you know, you both share the time. So just let me know.
I have not prepared. I have only one couplet of
Yeah.
Faz Ahmad
Tell us.
Faz. So the situation is very dark, because still we are having some hope, and in that regard he has written that I'm just speaking in Urdu, then I'll translate in English.
Mm-hmm.
So the couplet goes like this: Dil na ummeed to nahi, naakaam hi to hai. Dil na ummeed to nahi, naakaam hi to hai. Lambi hai gham ki sham, magar sham hi to hai. And the translation is that, oh yes, I grieve, but I do not despair. The dusk of sadness is long. It's just a dusk, that's all.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that is you know, a powerful poem. It's good, and it's good to hear. Sahar, how are you dealing with it? Can you write? Do you do also creative work now? Next, that you know, you try to deal with the past in a way. Do you feel this is a moment where you can now dive in head first into a new world that perhaps was not possible in Beirut and at the American University?
Slowly, yeah. I think slowly it's, I mean, I remember we talked, Frank, and I told you, like, I felt the artist in me was paralyzed after the explosion. I didn't feel that I was able to do any, like, be creative. And I think it's, you know, obviously, like living in San Francisco now, there's relatively speaking, there's peace of mind, there's security, there's all of that. So it's definitely, I'm in a better situation. But I'm still obviously dealing with all the things that we've lived throughout the last year in Lebanon. And I'm connected with home every day. Like I'm speaking, and I know there are actually what I prepared to share tonight is something
please.
that I didn't write. It's one of my favorite poems. It's by Mahmoud Darwish, the Palestinian poet. And I love this, and I dedicate this to all of us. I mean, especially, and I'm going to read this, and in my heart, I'm thinking of, you know, the Lebanese people who are suffering today in Lebanon, like the women who can't really afford sanitary pads, the people the pharmacies who don't have painkillers to sell, and the parents with infants who can't find milk for their children. And I'm also thinking in my heart of the Palestinian people and all the suffering that they've been enduring, you know, for so long. And the poem is called Think of Others. And just for the sake of time, I'm going to read the English.
Okay.
So this is Mahmoud Darwish, and the translation is by Muhammad Shaheen. And it's from Almond Blossoms and Beyond. It's the book by Mahmoud Darwish. As you prepare your breakfast, think of others. Do not forget the pigeon's food. As you conduct your wars, think of others. Do not forget those who seek peace. As you pay your water bill, think of others, those who are nursed by clouds. As you return home to your home, think of others. Do not forget the people of the camps. As you sleep and count the stars, think of others, those who have nowhere to sleep. As you liberate yourself in metaphor, think of others, those who have lost the right to speak. As you think of others far away, think of yourself. Say, if only I were a candle in the dark. I love this. It speaks to, you know, to my feelings today, and yeah.
Yeah, and this is so important to think of others, and to really.
I think this is what the event is doing,
serious.
Frank.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. You know, really, this is what we try to, and I think. Before we heard someone said, an Indian artist who said, as in said, Charlie, if I had to say it right, not just think, you know, how do you feel in someone else's shoe? Take your own shoes off first, you know, because what we do is we have our shoes on, and then we go in it. So it's really wrong, and we should be different. And I think this is also think of others. It's a very big reminder of that. And this is serious. It sounds so easy, it sounds so simple, and yet it is so hard to do,
Yeah.
and so much suffering in the world is because we are not able to listen and not able to think of others, and we think of ourselves first, me
Yeah.
often included. And this is a time where we radically have to rethink what we did. So really, Sahar, thank you for making it a point to bring Shakir in, even so you have so much more to talk about your work. So it's very wonderful of you. And let's go over right away to Malaysia/Australia, which is the DNA of a company that is a stunning one, that does work, I think, out of their own business, which is a laundromat, a really big one. I thought it might be a small one with 2 or 3 machines, but no, the image they showed, it's a really big little tiny factory, but they say we are independent, we do our own work. So we welcome Govin and Terence. And so really, how are things? So I don't know, where do we start? Should we start with Australia or?
We'll start in Malaysia. Hello, Frank,
Malaysia.
how are you doing?
Yeah,
What's it been, 13 hours since you started? 13 hours?
I try to ignore it. I try not to think about it because it's not good.
Fantastic. Firstly, thank you for having us back. I mean, we enjoyed the first round when we were on the Seagull Talks, and we're really grateful to be on the HowlRound for India. Great to meet you guys, Nisha, Diya, Tom, Sahar, and Shakir. And it's amazing to hear about your work and what's going on in your respective communities. We are all going through similar circumstances, but in different various degrees. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Terence, and I run a company called Terry Indica's with Govin.
And hello, Frank, and also great to meet you, Tom, Sahar, Shakir, Diya, and Nisha. My name is Govin, and I run a company called Terry Indica's with Terence. And Frank, last night, before I slept, I tuned into the first session, and I set my computer to pick up certain words from the conversation. And at present, you have used the word stunning 186 times and amazing 154 times. So I'm guessing the talks have provoked strong emotions and have moved the spirit.
Yeah, they really did. How is the situation for you guys? Tell us a bit.
How's the situation here? Well, like the last time we told you, we have been taking an indefinite break from the performing arts. The funny thing is we actually decided to stop work on 4th February, as we told you the last time. We turned down a bit of organizational funding from the Malaysian government. We canceled the European tour of our human trafficking work called Skin, and we put on hold developing a new site-specific product we were doing with Connect's Cultural City in Buenos Aires. And fortunately or unfortunately, the timing was kind of perfect because 6 weeks later, the world kind of stopped with us.
Actually, you know, I don't think it was that funny because I honestly believe that COVID stole our thunder. I mean, you know, we had crafted the perfect Instagram post about stopping and reflecting and reanalyzing our art, and then everybody was stopping and reflecting. So, you know.
And yes, here we are 18 months later, still very much in a stop state and still very much trying to reflect and figure out that Instagram post. Well, you asked us, well, what is it like here? Yeah.
Yeah, so Frank, last time we spoke, it was the 16th of June, 2020, which is exactly about a year ago. And a year ago, Malaysia had started to open up.
Today, Malaysia is back in an enforced movement control order, hardcore lockdown.
A year ago, Malaysia recorded 11 new COVID cases and a total of 85 deaths.
Yesterday, Malaysia recorded close to 13,000 new cases and deaths have reached almost to 8,000.
Wow.
A year ago, Malaysia and its new government at the time had implemented effective lockdown and contact tracing measures, which helped nullify the spread of COVID and put us on top of the map as one of the most successful nations in the fight against the pandemic.
On January 11th, the Malaysian government declared a state of emergency, suspended parliament to prevent a vote of no confidence, and have continued on the part of ineffective measures. It's what it seemed to is an attempt to cling on to power and use the pandemic as an excuse to do so.
A year ago, cafes and bars reopened, providing much needed fuel and respite to the creation process.
Today, cafes and bars remain shut, and most of the good ones have closed for good.
A year ago, theaters and massage parlors remained closed.
Today, theaters and massage parlors are still closed.
A year ago, Terry and I were relishing the time of enforced collaboration, of being in the same place, inside the same bubble, creating with no pressure of presentation.
Today, Govin has run away to Australia, leaving me in Malaysia.
Look, I mean, I didn't really run away. I'm in Australia because I had to work on a couple of projects across Perth, Melbourne, and Sydney. And just so you know, Melbourne is back in lockdown. I'm in isolation because Australia is grappling with the Delta variant. And as of today, we have 7 cases, and it's very, very serious.
Think about that. 7 cases in Australia, serious. Ultimately, Frank, COVID is about perspective.
Yeah.
And while globally we are united in fighting this pandemic, every nation, every town, family, individual has now had their own experience with this disease and has been impacted with it in their own way. Now, we've spent the last few hours listening to what has happened. I mean, last night we tuned in and we've tuned in and on and off and listen to what's happening to our friends in India. And we cannot, to be honest, help but feel privileged, even though this is going on, what's going on around us. It's incredible how different governments have used the pandemic as an opportunity to quell protests, to assert control, to get propaganda out there and shift policies, all in the name of our good.
Yeah, I mean, but, like, I think history has taught us anything, look, these people, I feel, will be judged for their action. And when this crisis passes, and, it will pass, fingers crossed, we will be at the wiser. And, it is up to us, the artists, the storytellers, to put these folks to task and ultimately, write the stories of how history will remember this moment collectively. And I think that is the responsibility that we have. And, and I think it's a very important responsibility, even if for the moment we are driving Ubers or delivering food or doing things that we otherwise wouldn't do. But I think, if anyone is going to do it for no money and a lot of time, it'd probably be the artists, because, we already do a lot of things for no money and a lot of time anyways.
Yeah, and to understand what the situation here, I mean, the Malaysian government has been rolling out a lot of funds, a lot of grants to help people. But as I spoke to someone, and they said the aim for them to help artists is just survival at the moment. They don't have a plan, because how do you plan for something like this? As soon as you think you're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and then you go back into the cavern right again. And that's what's happened in Malaysia. We never expected to reach, I mean, a year ago is what we told you. It was so great. We had loosened all the lockdown measures. Everything was back to where it was, and only theaters were not open, which was crazy. And massage parlors.
And massage parlors, yeah.
And massage parlors. Can you imagine theater and massage parlors when the lockdown had ended? That's where we are. And now we still remain closed, but so is everything else. And while artists are struggling, so is the business community, so are families, because daily wage earners can't go out to eat. And there's something which started in Malaysia, which is called the Raise the White Flag initiative. So in case people didn't have food, but they couldn't venture out, you raise a white flag and your neighbor or somebody would give food to you. And then, so people started raising white flags. And what we were shocked to see is the number of people raising white flags. People who had almost given up because they can't get basic necessities, and they will list down what they want. And you will read stuff from basic food. There'll be milk powder for their babies, diapers, and it's quite scary to what is happening here. And it's not reached the epic proportions of what is happening in India, but it's still reached to a level which we never expected, and that has really affected us. So Govin and I always talk like, what stories do you tell in times like this, right? Because everything's so dire. Everybody's looking to survive, and how do we contribute? So that's the conversations we try to have at this moment.
And you have it on Zoom, I guess, the conversation.
Yeah, mostly on WhatsApp, and sometimes on Telegram, and sometimes on iMessenger. maybe Facebook as well. Like, you know, that I think.
And you're lucky that you haven't been taxed on WhatsApp. That's what they did in Lebanon. Like, can you
that is
imagine
some
how
crazy
absurd?
shit, man.
Isn't
That
you
that,
would
that is
not believe
crazy.
it.
that is some
Wow.
crazy
Joke.
shit.
Yeah, it sounds like a
Yeah,
joke.
wow.
You know.
Yeah, yeah.
As soon as, yeah, you can't, like, what's happening, you can't even write it. If somebody wrote this, they will say you're crazy if this is happening. You know what I mean? If we were a year ago to write this as a work of fiction, people would go, this is insane. No way would be in Malaysia would hundreds of people be raising flags for food. You know, if anybody's been to Malaysia, it's bountiful for food. You can get meals on the street for 25 cents, which is American cents. 25, you can get it for a penny. I mean, for a dime, which is crazy because it's a ringgit for a meal. You can pick up 3 ringgit meals, which work out to less than a US dollar. So food is not expensive here, cost of living. So when you think about it and how dire the situation has become, and you go, wow. And then hearing that story of the tax, I'm going like, oh, wow, it's getting crazier and crazier out there.
It's quite something. It's such a real catastrophic failure of government, and it shows politics does matter. People who are in charge, it does matter. It is important, and we have to get away from that idea. You know, let's get a better app. Let's go to the gyms and let's go to therapy and. You know, and you find the one perfect partner, you know, on the dating side. No, there is bigger things, and you know what the situation in India reminds us, you know, how complicated and how fast it can happen. And just thinking about Beirut, how horrible it already was before and complicated, you know, with this uprising, but enter COVID, but then this explosion, you know, and stuff like this can happen, you know, anywhere overnight, and shake really the foundations of our belief, and the realization, as Sahar said, that perhaps nothing really has happened and moved is even more unbelievable in the sense really of the word. So Terence and Govin, I remember you said, you know, your rehearsal room was above the laundry. You have this like, you know, like car wash like thing. So is it empty? What's happening there on in your rehearsal room where you put the workers in the evening? I think they put away the plastic bins and then you rehearse. Yeah. Is it empty?
Yeah, no. I mean, look, one of the things that we decided to do is is actually to take a break and actually relook at what we're going to do over the next few years. And we have still been developing work and developing ideas. Most of our ideas are pretty much, are being made for a world post-COVID, where we can sit back in theaters or sit inside shipping containers and whatnot. So as for now, the laundry is functioning as a laundry. We are still washing for hospitals and for hotels, not so much, but we are doing industrial loads for COVID hospitals across the country. And so that's kept us busy and kept us going. Terry, do you want to add, because you're actually on the ground?
Yeah, well, look, the people who are wondering what we do, many years ago when we started our theater company, and we knew we were never going to make money, so we started a small industrial laundry to make ends meet. So our rehearsal room was above this laundry. As times grew, our theater work grew, we traveled overseas, and so did industrial laundry. Today, we have an industrial laundry which washes about 11 tons of hospital linen. So as our theater business grew, so did that. So even though now we're not performing, our industrial laundry is still running. And we have people working, and we are trying to sustain people through this period. So that's where we are today. So the theater room is complete. Our rehearsal room is completely empty. We do now. It's literally dark at the moment, but hopefully the light will come on again soon.
Amazing. And I wonder if one could put a number on how many COVID viruses you washed out of those hospital linens. It must be billions of billions.
About out of the 11 tons daily, about 3 tons is COVID, which is quite scary. So we literally, everybody goes in a disposable PPE, and they're covered head to toe. So all the employees know what they're doing, and they're doing is very important because it's keeping the doctors and our frontliners safe. And giving them enough, because each time they go in to see a doctor, they go in to see a patient, they have to change, right? They can't keep going in the same uniform. So it's literally, it's something which we believe we are doing is very important. So hence
So
why.
you are doing
And
the
Frank-
dirty laundry of
Frank,
the.
Govin and I have written something we want to share.
Yes, please.
There's no time. We had a long conversation about this, and we decided we would actually write something.
And I would like to call this section Headlines from the Future.
So in an attempt of hope to look forward, so think about this next bit is news headlines from the 21st of July, 2031.
Good evening, hello, welcome one and all. Salam satu Malaysia. Sorry, this is a Malaysian news update.
In today's top stories, President Kamala Devi Harris today signed a joint resolution passed by the US Senate to counteract the threat of an invasion of Taiwan by the People's Republic of China. The resolution gave the US president the authority to employ the armed forces of the United States as she deems necessary for the specific purpose of securing and protecting Formosa and Pescadores against armed attack. The resolution was formulated amid the Taiwan Straits crisis, which is a brief period of armed conflict that involved incursions made by the Communist Party of China on the islands in Taiwan Strait controlled by the Kuomintang, led by the Republic of China. A latent response by the United Nations Security Council regarding these developments prompted US President Kamala Devi Harris to request the resolution in January of 2031.
On to more positive news. The entire global population has finally achieved COVID-0, eradicating the disease once and for all. Today also marks the end of 5 years of visa amnesty programs in many countries. The program initially launched to combat the COVID-19 amongst undocumented workers and refugees who were given a 5-year visa exemption if they registered to be vaccinated. These mass vaccination programs across the globe help put an end to the term illegal immigrants.
Now on to a bit of business news. In a show of lasting stability, McDonald's opened its first ever outlet in the People's Republic of Palestine. This in turn prompted a shortage of beef bacon in the Arab Peninsula.
Staying in the Middle East, the Baghdad Pact was officially launched today by British Prime Minister Sir Hugh Grant. The Middle Eastern nations and the United Kingdom will form a cooperative pact similar to NATO, in which the participating countries would agree to protect each other, cooperate on trade and military issues, and agree not to interfere in each other's affairs.
Staying with business, Disneyland opened its 7th resort today in Lagos, Nigeria, making it the biggest entertainment hub in the continent after Sun City in South Africa.
And a move to entertainment news. The Bond 27, Quantum of the Russian Spy with the Golden Gun That Never Dies Tomorrow, nearly sweeps the 2031 Academy Awards, winning Best Picture, Best Actor for Rico Rodriguez as Bond, Best Actress Zendaya, and Best Director Sam Mendes. Bond 27 also took home the awards for Best Sound Mixing and Best Original Song, Bang Bang, I Killed the Russian Spy with the Golden Gun That Never Dies Tomorrow by Coldplay.
And finally, we do have some breaking news from Kremlin in Russia. Vladimir Putin has just resigned from the Russian presidency, bringing an end to an almost 20-year stronghold of the highest office in Russia. This shift in regime has long time been coming, and we patiently await more updated news on who will succeed Putin at the helm of the Russian state.
Thanks, Terence. And that's our news update from the future from now. It's been a real pleasure bringing you these updates from 2031 to our viewers.
Amazing update, and thank you for bringing this kind of sarcastic, beautiful joy to us. We have Tom Walker with us from the Living Theater. Tom, we have a minute and a half, but I would like you to read again your poem if you have it handy, the one you read before, because Tom had a session earlier, but he shared with us some of his writing, and if we don't too much over time, I think it should fit in.
You want me to read the same one?
Yes.
There is a time. There is a time when black and white will live together. There is a time. There is a time when Arab and Jew will live together. There is a time. There is a time when Jew and Christian will live together. There is a time. When is the time, I ask? There is a time when black juice and Jewish blood and white stuff dissolve, and pain and tears and crack up are held down, but we are now only in the midst of the drama. It's not over, not over, not over now. Why did the people kill all those in front of, in back of, and all around Esther? Why? Why did the third caliph kill the second caliph, kill the son-in-law? Why? Why did the popes kill Borgia, Sforza, Borgia, Farnese, Medici? Why? I'm sure I know. It's blood feuds and the very rich of whatever race, holding on to power. The fat is in the fire, the rose of Sharon's under grass. The party's on. 2 Oscars is not enough. Reparations are on the table. Jerusalem is blowing up. Next year, underground. There is a time when it will be worked out, we say. But now we are in the midst of the drama, living together. As others are being killed and killing, we can instantaneously communicate that we are late. Global fate. I am a visitor from out of state. There is a time, and it is now, and it is not.
Wonderful. There's a time, and it's now, and it's not. So thank you all. I have to switch over to a different link. Nisha, Govin, Tom, Diya, Shakir, Terence, Sahar. I all feel you were here in my living room here with me, my little apartment. So thank you, and this was so inspiring.
Thank you, Frank.
Bye-bye, and see you all soon.
Thank you, Frank.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Frank. Bye.
Lovely meeting all of you guys.